Stevens, Ken Kreitzer for CBSI Services, talking business. We're at NYU today in New York City with our friend Ruth Stevens, who is the president of eMarketing Strategies, and just back from a teaching trip overseas. Ruth, always good to see you.
Thank you, Ken. Glad to be back with you.
Our pleasure. And Ruth is a adjunct professor here at NYU and author, writer. And Ruth, first we've got to hear about your trips. You went to Europe first, to Denmark, and then went on to Asia. You went to India and then Vietnam. Tell us first of all, what was the stop in Denmark like for you?
Thanks. I was invited by the Executive Ed Department of the Danish Technical University to give a talk on B2B digital marketing, and I really enjoyed it. I also had a chance to pop over to Malmo, which is in Sweden, but right next to Copenhagen, and enjoy giving a talk to a company there. So I had a great time.
What are some of the issues, key topics that you were discussing, heard about when you were in Europe?
Well, I was actually more presenting about what's working, what's going on in the US, than I was about gathering information about how they're doing marketing. But I'm quite sure that the marketing activities in the B2B world in Europe are very similar to what they are here. It's all about having clean and accurate data, having a good strategy for segmenting and communicating with target audiences, and making sure that you're only passing highly qualified leads to your sales counterparts.
Very good. And you went to India to teach, as you have in the past. Tell us about the school that you teach at there, and the course, and what was some of the discussion?
So I had a very good time returning to India, to the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore, which is one of the most respected business schools in the country, and it's 100% graduate students. And what's extra interesting about this school is that the graduate students who are getting MBA degrees come to the MBA program right out of undergrad. And I would say about 100% of the students there were engineering majors in undergrad. So they arrive on campus ready to learn all about business management, and most of them have never worked in a company. So the nature of the discussion and the course content is quite different from MBA programs here, where people have worked for 4, 6, 10 years and have sort of a place to park the information in their brains. It's a very different environment. What I will say is that the faculty is almost entirely educated abroad, highly, highly skilled business faculty, and the campus is spectacularly beautiful. So I love being there. Fantastic school.
And on the way home, you had a chance to stop in Vietnam and participate in a couple of educational projects there. Tell us a little bit about your visit to Vietnam.
You know, as a baby boomer, Vietnam was a really big part of my young adulthood. And the idea of visiting Hanoi to give a lecture on B2B digital marketing to business school students would have been unheard of in the day, but Vietnam is booming, as your viewers probably know, and it's a very exciting environment because about 20 years ago, the government, despite still being reputedly communistic, deregulated a lot of business activity and allowed phenomenal growth. And it's really an exciting place to be.
Can I ask you about trade groups? Has been a big topic, Pan-Pacific trade agreement discussions and discussions with Chinese influence in the air. What were you hearing in Vietnam about where their future trading partners may be?
Yeah, I was astonished at how much hostility there is toward China in Vietnam. And they are coincidentally, the huge beneficiaries of the current Trump administration tariff strategies, because U.S. and other companies are trying to find other sources for their supply chain. And Vietnam is receiving a lot of extra business as a result.
So all that business that would have been coming from China is coming from Vietnam. That's interesting. Well, you've been back and you've been writing and teaching quite a bit. And one of the things that you mentioned as a B2B trend is the concept of customer success and software as a service. We're just talking a little bit about what Amazon was written up in the New York Times about the software they're offering along with their cloud computing platform. Well, tell us a little bit about your thought about software as a service.
Well, it's definitely the way to go for software publishers, not to mention the demise of shrink-wrapped products on shelves. Most IT software, or much of what used to be installed by IT departments, is now being delivered through the web in the cloud, and the business software is living on the servers owned by the software publisher, who's in charge of keeping it up and making it available to their subscribers. And this means that the IT departments have successfully offloaded a lot of the pain of managing software for their companies. And users are able to receive the benefits of fresh, updated software without, a lot of extra maintenance and installation.
Sure. Now, we've been talking a little bit about the consumerization of business to business and communicating with business buyers and changing a bit younger people involved in purchasing decisions. What do you see happening there, Ruth?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Ken, that one of the reasons we were talking about software as a service is because its arrival in tech buying today has resulted in a new appreciation among software marketers of the importance of managing customer interaction, customer satisfaction, customer preference with their services, because they're buying it on a subscription basis. So in order to prevent churn, prevent defection, software publishers are now realizing that they need to develop beyond simply customer service. They have introduced a new function called customer success.
Okay.
The topic created or related to software as a service, I thought, and has big implications for marketers, because it means we need to not only sell the product, we need to make sure that the customers are using it happily and productively and will continue to pay and maintain rather than defect.
Okay, and talked a little bit about changes in the buyers in business to business marketing between small business and mid-size and corporate business. What do you see happening there with changes in the buying group?
Right. It's so interesting. As we all know, most business purchases are made by a team, often known as the buying circle or the buying center, and those team members come from different backgrounds. Some are users of the product, some are technical people, maybe legal people, and that whole group is now shifting a bit as millennials start to grow into important business roles like serving as the specifier or the influencer in such purchase decision making. And we as marketers need to not only know who are all the members of our buying group in B2B, but we also need to know how they behave and what are their agendas. And we're finding that millennials simply behave differently from their senior counterparts who come from Generation Z or our baby boomers. For example, a typical way that a buyer will research a new product traditionally has been they would go to the company website. Well, first they would search on Google and then go to the company website. But we're learning today that millennials actually, their first research effort is with social media. So this means that we B2B marketers have extra reason to be very active in social media, and we need to be prepared through those channels to be answering the kinds of questions that they would be asking as part of their research.
Got to ask you now, when you say social media, what kind of platforms are you thinking? Because obviously I would have said, well, they check Google or check the website for a company, but how would someone want to make sure that their company, their offers appear on social media so they attract the attention of this buying group?
Yeah, it's so interesting. 10, 15 years ago, I would never have recommended to a client that they have an industrial product presented on Facebook. But today, it's different. They even really heavy B2B product categories need to be active on Facebook, on Instagram, not only on LinkedIn and not only on technical buying networks. So the world of B2B marketing has changed. And that's to your question about the nature of B2B buying as consumers, it is related to this. We're finding that as business buyers are buying on behalf of their companies, of course, they need to be able to justify their recommended purchase. They need to have a lot of data and specifications to back up the decision that they made on which product to buy. But that doesn't mean that they're simply 100% about objectivity and data and justification. They are still humans, and they expect to be treated like humans even though they're buying on behalf of their companies. So, for example, they want to be communicated with in a personal way. And that means if we're going to use personalization, that means that we have to have the data and the tools to be able to do that. We can't address a person by his or her wrong name or wrong title. Amazon would never do that. And these business buyers are now bringing the expectations for web experience, for pricing, visibility, and other factors from their consumer experience into their B2B buying expectations.
You know, we spent some time with Joe Connolly, WCBS Radio. He does a small business breakfast series trying to help small business people in the New York metropolitan area, and has a lot of insight. And I always ask people, it's one thing for a lot of B2B systems online to work for larger companies where you have resources, but smaller companies have limited resources, limited technical experience, and people to run things, but still need to have a presence. And you're saying you got to be on social media too. What are some of the keys for smaller companies to try to be able to compete in this online environment?
It's so interesting how business services have changed thanks to the cloud. And today, you can start a company and maintain a company using the tools that have arrived literally in the last 5 or 6 years that allow you to have all of your IT in the cloud, and even your business services can be shared today. You don't have to necessarily, if depending on how large you are, hire an HR department. You can outsource that. You don't have to rent an office. You can have everybody at a WeWork. So starting and running a business today is easier than ever. Same is true of legal services, tax services. It's remarkable.
Well, I think what you're pointing out is there are a lot of outsourced services, sources of expertise that smaller companies can tap into so that they can get the expertise that they need at, kind of on a shared basis. You mentioned, about customer service, some of the trends that have been happening, and you say chat boxes now are a big factor. We see them when we do inquiries about products and go to company websites, and can lead to email chat. Tell us a little bit about what's effective use of a chat box.
Well, of course, chatbots were originally developed to allow frequently asked questions to be answered automatically for a website visitor. But and the technology is getting better and better. So some people don't even realize that it's a bot. They think, and in fact, many companies,
when it's done really well.
okay, but many companies do actually connect you with a live person. But in the case of a bot, the experience has gotten smoother and more natural feeling. But what I'm seeing now that's really exciting is that chatbots have become an opportunity to not only answer questions, but to collect data about visitors. You often can have a little email request box at the bottom of the chatbot and add that name to your database and turn what was otherwise a completely anonymous visit into an opportunity to kick off and sustain a business.
And Ruth Stevens, one of the things that you write about and a key point for you in business-to-business marketing, we know how it works kind of in consumer, but is influencer marketing, trying to find the right people to comment on your brand, to recommend your brand and the benefits. Tell us a little bit about how you see influencer marketing working effectively in business-to-business.
It's really developed into quite a mature marketing channel today in B2B, and it's similar to B2C in that we're trying to recruit somebody who has a good reputation and also has a lot of followers or is otherwise broadly influential. But the big difference with consumer and B2B is that while in consumer influencer marketing, you're picking a celebrity, maybe a sports or a fashion celeb. But in B2B, you're picking not a celeb, but a thought leader. More likely someone who's an expert in a particular subject area and well respected by the community. And that's the person that you want to sort of recruit to say nice things about your product and your company. And other than that, the process is pretty much the same. You follow that person, try to establish a relationship of trust, maybe give the person an opportunity to try your product out, and if it's in a business, if it's appropriate to their business, and then persuade them to say nice things about your company or otherwise represent you to their followers. It's working really well in B2B.
Okay, and Ruth Stevens, tell us a little bit about, you're going to be teaching here in the winter going into the spring semester here in New York City at the Stern School of Business at NYU, right here on West 4th Street. What will be some of the topics you'll bring up to develop with your students in the upcoming year?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm very busy trying to prepare my 2 courses for Stern that start in the last week in January. And one of the courses is for undergrads. It's called International Studies. But the marketing course that I'm teaching is in new product development. And that's a really fun topic because everyone is excited about entrepreneurship and startups, but this is actually about how established companies can put in place a process that allows them to win in the new product arena and deliver a steady stream of profitable new products to fuel their profitable growth in going forward.
Always good to hear from Ruth Stevens and hear about her teaching trip this fall to Europe, to India, and to Vietnam, and we always appreciate her insight into the world of business-to-business marketing. Ruth Stevens, of course, is president of eMarketing Strategies based in New York City, is an adjunct associate professor at the NYU Stern School of Business, and an adjunct visiting professor at the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore. Thank you again to Ruth Stevens. And this is Ken Kreitzer for CBSI Services, talking business from our headquarters in Harrison, New York. Have a good day, everybody.